Good day and Happy New Year. Welcome to a special episode of the Cory Morgan Show. Yeah, it's been quite a year, and you know what? It's worth kind of reviewing it and going over it and just chewing on what's been a strange and unusual time in Canadian politics and the world. So who better to sit down and go over all this with today than the Western Standard's news editor who's been trying to keep up and cover all this, Dave Naylor. Well, welcome to a full show. I can babble at you.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you and Jane.
Yeah.
It's full of success for you.
Thanks, and to you and yours. And
do you know what it is in terms of the year, the Chinese zodiac, the year of the...
I have no idea.
Oh, neither do I.
Some animal or another. I mean, whatever it is, I'm sure they eat it.
Yeah, you know, it's been a utterly crazy news year. From, you know, politics to sports, you know, it's just one day after another. There's just never a slow news day, and stories take twists and turns, and it's been a lot of fun. And a tip of the hat to my news crew across Western Canada. I think they've done a great job this year. Oh
yeah, well, that's it. I mean, it's, you know, the Standard's been doing well. I mean, lots of news is actually good fodder for us, even if a lot of it's horrible news. But a great crew lined up, Saskatchewan, BC, out here.
Yeah, it's all good, and onwards in the future for 2025.
Yeah, so we'll deal with 2025 in the coming shows and weeks and months to go here. Let's look at 2024 and how crazy it was. I guess maybe, you know, there's no sense trying to guess which one was the top story or whatnot, but one that has to head it off was the American election. I mean, it impacts the world. It impacts Canada. Donald Trump is back.
Donald Trump is back, bigger and badder than ever. Yeah, it was worldwide implications with the war in the Middle East and then the war in the Ukraine. So it's going to be a very interesting presidency starting January 20th. And let's be honest, Cory, he's already basically acting president. You know, world leaders are going to him. They're not going to Joe Biden, even when he's still the president. They're going to him. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, well, and Biden, yeah, he's disappeared. I mean, Biden disappeared at the first debate last year. I mean, he's just not cognitively there. They're kind of going through the motions. We'll keep him in until the inauguration. Nobody's really seen much of him.
No, and I think the Democrats have a lot to answer for that, because they hid that. They hid how bad his mental state is from the American people until it was too late. Until Trump crushed him in that debate, and they realized that okay, he had to go, and you know, I guess Kamal is our choice, and didn't work out well for him.
No, so now we get the Orange Man, and he's got to be at least the most unpredictable. We don't know what he's really going to do. I mean, he says what he's going to do, but then other people dismiss it as trolling, and it is trolling. But sometimes he does follow through on what he's going to do. I mean, the biggest fear is the tariffs. I mean, that would cripple Canada. Do we think it's going to happen?
Yes. I mean, the last time he was in, he put tariffs in, and slowly had to be worked through to be lowered. I think since day one, Alberta's, I think, kind of lobbying for a special deal. You know, they immediately reacted to his border thing with Daniel Smith sent the sheriffs down to the border, and they're going to be patrolling it, because I mean, America does not want to tariff the oil exports coming out of Canada, obviously, because that's going to mean higher gas production for them. But you know, lumber, car manufacturing, stuff like that, I'm pretty sure it's coming. He trolls and trolls, but he's not one for idle threats. You know, he says he'll settle the Ukraine war on day one. I wouldn't put him past it. You know, I mean, he says if Hamas hasn't released the hostages in the Gaza Strip, there's going to be hell to pay, and there probably will be. But you know, how he does it, I guess, is going to be all part of the fun and games going forward.
Well, yeah, and how, if anything, can we do something about it? I mean, one of the things out of him too is he does. I mean, some people say he responds to strength, or at least he respects it, and it's clear he doesn't hold Canadian leadership in any regard whatsoever. I mean, people, again, they dismiss the trolling. Well, wait a minute. This is a world leader openly mocking another world leader. Like, this is not a healthy relationship and dynamic building up.
No, and it's not like we're a third world country. We're a fellow G7 country. And as you mentioned, Trump's got an intense dislike for Trudeau.
Well, most of us do.
Most of us do, I guess. So, and you remember Trudeau got, at a G7 meeting, he got caught bad-mouthing Trump. Trump doesn't forget that kind of stuff. And Trump takes great delight in calling Trudeau governor of the 51st state, any time he can. So yeah, I mean, can you imagine those two going into a room? Trudeau's got no strength. He can't even control his own party, his own caucus. How's he gonna stand up to the force that is one Donald Trump?
Well, let's segue into that then. The kind of the bombshell that hit with Chrystia Freeland. There's another big story right at the end of the year. She was getting ready to deliver what everybody knew was going to be a terrible fiscal update. They deferred it for months. I mean, this was supposed to happen in fall, and then Trudeau just shot himself in the foot and bizarrely fired her.
Yeah, and I think you said before we went on the air that he's delusional. So he calls up Freeland on a Zoom meeting and says, "Hey, okay, you're going to deliver this really bag of steaming, to the Canadian people, $62 billion deficit. And guess what? I'm going to fire you, and Mark Carney's going to come in and take your place." So Freeland thought about it over the weekend and decided to give a big middle finger to her. Really a boss who she was really loyal to, right? Even in the weeks, the GST holiday, just a couple of weeks ago, she was at his side, pitching how wonderful it is. And then she's, criticizing it in her resignation letter. But the day that the economic statement was to be delivered, she quit. And it was panic stations on the Liberal side. They went through, I guess Mark Carney said no, he didn't want the job. So I don't know where Trudeau got that from. And they went through, next in line was Francois Philippe Champagne, and he said no. And the two Randys, and I guess they both said no. So they ended up just walking it into the House of Commons, laying it on the table. Okay, there it is. We're not even gonna, read it. So it really was. And it's, how does he go from here? How does he survive? I guess that's going to be part of the fun watching in the days ahead. But what a mess.
Well, it's really exposed his nature a lot. I mean, talking about the arrogance. He taking Freeland for granted. And again, hey, I'm not a big fan of her either. She rode this ship all the way up to where it is. But still, she was loyally bobbling her head behind him at every conference. She ate a lot of poop on his behalf. Whenever there were bad times, actually, he would often throw her into the fire rather than taking it on himself. But then just to think that, okay, she is so loyal, she loves me so much that she will take this. She will take a Zoom meeting firing and still work for me, 3 days from now and deliver this thing. Like, just so arrogant and vain. We already knew he was that way, but this was beyond the pale.
Yeah, I mean, you always think that Trudeau can't surprise you anymore, and then he always does. But why wouldn't he have Mark Carney signed, sealed, and delivered? Why wouldn't he say, okay, this is what's going to happen, and Mark, you're going to be finance minister Friday afternoon, and Carney agree with it? But apparently that didn't happen. And then the PMO is saying, well, we never told Freeland that Carney was going to replace her. Well, they did, right? And they lied about it. They did. And I think I agree with you that some people are making Freeland out to be some sort of hero for standing up to Trudeau, and I think you're right. I mean, she was the captain of the bus that steered a lot of this huge deficit, and she was right along there, with Trudeau shoveling out the money. So, good for her for finally finding some backbone, but she's partly responsible for the fiscal mess we're in.
Well, and he's shattered what little support and trust he had in his caucus and cabinet now. I mean, if he would throw Freeland under the bus like that, every cabinet member and MP is thinking, boy, he wouldn't think twice about, just ending my career as well. Like he really, I don't know if he realizes how badly he's hurt himself.
No, and then he basically ignored it the first night and then joked about it the second night where he said, all families fight. Well, yeah, I mean, but this is like taking knives out of people's backs for type of fight. So, yeah, it was really Machiavellian of him to think that.
Well, but poorly executed
Very
Machiavellian.
poorly executed,
that implies smart planning, and that's where we get into. I'm honestly starting to question a little bit of his sanity. I mean, did he really believe? And I think that's the case. Maybe he believed when he told her on the Zoom meeting, and this is starting to leak out, that Carney was coming in. I think he really thought it was going to happen. But anybody standing on the outside looking, well, Carney never said he was coming. Why would you think he was coming in?
Yeah, I think it's, any sane person, any sane leader would 6-7 months ago taken a look at the polls and had a moment of reflection and done what's best for his party. And he is just in such a bubble of narcissism and you know what, I'll even give you maybe a little bit of mental illness and stuff like that, or insanity, but he just cannot see the writing on the wall. I mean, the last polls of the year had the Liberals being wiped out to just 10 seats, and Poilievre like 25 points ahead in the polls. So why does he want to hang around to be crushed? Does he want to tie Harper or beat Harper for length of term in office? That may be part of it. But yeah, who knows?
No,
we need to be psychiatrists to figure out what's going on.
And the whole the guessing, that was coming up. I mean, the sudden cancellation of every year-end interview. Yeah. If you're going to hang on, you want those interviews. You want to get out there.
You want to come out firing and, full steam ahead and sort of rally the troops. And he also left himself open for more charges of misogyny. Right, firing another cabinet minister to bring in a man.
That's the other part.
Right? Was that the third time?
It's really turning into a pattern. And there was Philpott, Wilson-Raybould.
Jody Wilson-Raybould.
There was that Freeland. One member of Parliament too who said he screamed at her. I think she was a secretary of. But he's had a bad relationship with women in Parliament. I mean, it's brought a lot of that discussion about those self-styled male feminists. Boy, they tend to actually have a pretty bad.
Ever since he was groping women at that ski festival, it's been a pattern, a definite pattern. So, and he's ignored now by other world leaders. He's a laughingstock, and as Poilievre said, before Christmas, he's an international embarrassment to this country.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not just that he's a laughingstock. We all get to wear it as well. So hopefully some things get remedied in 2025. Again, we're obviously looking forward to a very tumultuous year, no matter what happens.
No matter what happens, it's going to be a roller coaster.
So let's get on to another. I mean, this has been going on for years, but it's still a story. It's happening right now. The releases come out, and people are almost ignoring them. But the residential school issue, it's not resolved. In fact, they're starting to talk about making it illegal to discuss it any longer.
Yeah, I mean. It kind of boiled over earlier this year when it was when we reported that $8 million had been given to the band out in Kamloops to, I guess, research and whatever they wanted to do to try and figure out the issue. And they won't talk about what they've done with the money. They refuse to say. We do know that there's been no digging. There's been no graves found there. So I think the backlash has begun. Canada went through like a period of national shame because of that. Right? The flags were lowered for forever.
Almost 6 months. There's never in Canadian history has that been done.
They were raised November 1st, only to be lowered and then stay lowered. We got a new holiday out of it, surfing holiday. It was a huge thing. It was an international story, right? All over the world, Canadian kids murdered at residential schools, and there's not a single scintilla of proof yet. What are we, 3 years on? And I think the backlash is starting, especially when the Liberals want to bring in a law to make it illegal to deny the horrors of residential schools. So you're on record as claiming you're now considering a hoax.
Yeah.
That could be illegal in next year, and you could be carted off to jail for saying that.
As I said, take me to court on that one, because the first thing we'd have to do is discovery. Then, so let's get a shovel and dig 6 feet, and we'll know within half an hour. That's what's getting so frustrating with this. We're not talking about a complicated process. We can understand the need for sensitivity. doing it carefully. Yes, you don't want to just jump out there with a couple of clowns and start opening a hole. I mean, if there's remains down there, it's a forensic site. You want to be
You need the archaeologists.
careful, but you don't need 3 years to deal with this. This could have been done and should have been done a long time ago.
Long time ago. And the story's picking up also around the world that, 3 years later, nothing's been found. Was it really as bad as everybody says? But one of the things that frustrates me is the mainstream media are still saying, the bodies of 215 children, the graves of 215 children, even though it's not true.
No.
But they continue to spread the myth, the hoax. So, I agree with you. It's quite easily solved with sensitivity and with the proper equipment. But they don't want to solve it. I don't think the band.
Well,
they don't
it's
want
pretty
to
lucrative
lose
to keep this mystery going.
Sure, they don't want to lose that money, and it's now an industry in itself across Canada. The search for residential graves.
Well, I'm getting tired of seeing it. I think just a couple of weeks ago, another one came out. Look, we found a bunch of unmarked graves. Oh dear, where? In a cemetery.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. That's what's going to happen when you do that.
Because it's a lot of the graves are just marked with simple wooden crosses that over the decades get blown away, they erode. Of course, they're not going to be marked.
Yeah. But every time they find some, we need money to invest.
Can we investigate this? Yeah, it's a growing cottage industry.
Well, it's causing more and more hurt. I mean, the people who actually believe this, and I mean, the stories were absurd, but some people believe it. They really believe babies were strung on hooks, children who were awakened in the night and taken out to bury their murdered compatriots in the field. Like, this should be resolved. And I mean, if it's true, they're claiming this was happening into the 60s. Well, the perpetrators might still be out there.
Absolutely. Call in the RCMP. There's no doubt children died at residential schools, but it was mainly from tuberculosis, disease. There was not a systemic genocide of Aboriginal children by missionaries and nuns. Just didn't happen.
Well, let's speak about genocide then. We'll move into the next one with this. I mean, that's a term that's really getting abused, and to everything from PETA saying there's a genocide of chickens and from KFC,
which I fully support.
Yes, to of course now it's residential schools, and on to the Middle East. Apparently, genocide in Gaza. This is just going on and on. Again, the Israel conflict.
It's been a year of tragedy and warfare. Going back, it's more than a year now. I guess last October 2023, when Hamas made the tactical error to go in and kill 1,200 Israelis. The Israeli military response has turned Gaza into dust, rubble. There are hostages still being held somewhere in tunnels. That talks have been going on to get them out. At one point, they offered the terrorists $1 million for each hostage, and they got to go free. And then the problems escalated with Hezbollah lobbing in shells. So Israel invades southern Lebanon, and then they invade Syria when Assad leaves. So little Israel's fighting on 3 separate fronts and doing a hell of a job, I might add.
Well, might as well. This has been going on since '48. This is the part that does, and I love to rub it in with these Arabs. You guys do nothing but lose. You suck. You've got hundreds of times the population, the resources of this tiny little state of Israel, and they kick your asses every time. But unfortunately, it does make a subset of them more bloodthirsty, more horrible, and they pull off stunts like they did with the October 7th, attacking a music festival. How courageous.
Yeah.
But getting further to that, the exposure of the domestic extremists, whether it's the purple-headed idiots coming out of our universities or the domestic Islamic extremists, but Jared Yeager covered it quite well in Vancouver to really expose they really did support this terrorism. They support these acts. This is sick.
They did, and it's frightening to watch the almost weekly protests in Toronto, where you can wave a Hamas flag and be all masked up and chanting death to the Jews, and police officers are watching you from the side of the street, not taking any action. Synagogues have been firebombed. Jewish schools have been shot at. The one good move the Canadian government made was because of Jared. He got some video of what's the name of the town?
Samadou.
Rally in Vancouver, waving their flag and chanting, and Jared's video went viral. Every mainstream media in the country picked it up, and the next week the government put him on the terror list. So good for Jared, good for the power of the Western Standard to do that. But countries, I don't see it getting any better until the war is over.
Well, that's another question too. So that was right around October 7th when all the pro-terrorists, and I'm going to say there were pro-terrorist savages going on the streets to celebrate that slaughter of women at a music festival. We knew it was coming. We knew that these pro-terror protests were going to be there. Why was the Western Standard the only one on the ground in Vancouver to cover that?
Especially
CBC
when
knew
it was happening outside the
literally
CBC
outside their building,
outside the CBC building,
and they didn't cover it. CTV, Global, none.
I think it's a case of they're so regular now that the media just doesn't cover them. They don't think, well, just another march, right? But it's these jokers. They pick a Jewish neighborhood and they terrorize. They set up shop in the Jewish neighborhood and terrorize the poor people there until the police start cracking down, cracking heads, and making some arrests. It's just going to continue because there's no reason to stop. Let's face it, the Israelis are going to win the war. It's just a matter of time.
Israel's not going away.
Israel's not going away, and they've shown that. Israel has come out of it stronger and safer. Protest all you want, but you're not going to change anything. Lock down schools and try and intimidate professors and do all you want, but nothing's going to change.
For the sake of our own citizens, and they keep escalating it. That's the thing. These extremists aren't going to stop until we stop them.
Exactly.
And I was watching just another video in Toronto the other night. So now they've gone beyond blocking roads into Jewish neighborhoods and protesting outside of synagogues and cafes. Let's quit pretending it's not anti-Jew anymore, guys. But they're actually in the Jewish neighborhood. They have long flags on sticks. So they're at the back fences of the houses and waving them over the back fence to intimidate the people in the houses. And literally there's the police all standing by, letting them do it.
Yeah.
I mean, if these were Klansmen in a black neighborhood waving, burning crosses over the backs of fences, rightly so, the police would immediately grab them. But this way, they're bringing them coffee and donuts still. What the hell is going on?
It's crazy. Credit to Calgary Police and Edmonton Police
we haven't put up with them.
When the protesters tried it at the U of A and the U of C. They were quickly frog marched out with some pepper spray and paintball gun wounds. Yeah. Good for them. They have not been back, have they, Cory?
No. Well, and those idiots tried it down on a main street in Calgary one rush hour too, and the police pulled them out of there.
They were done quickly. So
it works.
It is a policing failure in Toronto is the big problem we've got right now, and I think it comes probably from the Toronto mayor. I mean, she's a wingnut, and the Toronto police chief is just weak and ineffective. You talk to the average Toronto cop, and I'm sure they'll tell you they want to get in there and bust these guys' heads open. But they can't because they haven't got the orders yet, right? And it really is a sad situation. And I would not want to be a Jewish person in Toronto at the moment. It's scary.
Oh, it just keeps coming up. All right, well, let's get on to something a little more odd. But it was an Olympic year.
It was, wasn't it?
Europe, and lo and behold, one of the things I dug up was I used to love National Lampoon, fantastic magazine, and you had PJ O'Rourke and others writing great stuff in it, and also, of course, you had topless women in the black and white photo funnies, but the covers were always awesome.
Yes,
and there's an old cover from them showing the CCCP and a person standing there for the Olympics in the 80s, and there's this giant bulge in her shorts, and it was a joke at that time. Now.
Right. I mean, you used to look at the East German women's weightlifting team, and you're like, come on here, guys. Come on. You're not fooling anybody. But it was great Olympics. Canada did excellent, but it was highlighted, overshadowed by gender identity. When you've got a boxer with male hormones beating the living crap out of his female compatriots, and winning the gold medal, and it sparked outrage. One of the boxing women who said, "No, I'm not going to fight her," her, was called, "You're discriminating." Well, I'm not just. don't want to get into a ring with a man and get the crap beat out of me.
Yeah.
It's not discrimination. It's the way the IOC supported the he boxer. I get confused here.
Yeah.
Supported the male boxer in the women's thing is just shows you how corrupt and how bad the IOC has been. All the way back to 1988 in Calgary. But it did spark a backlash, and there's been lots of sporting associations that have now come out and banned. You've got to be born female to compete in female sports. If you're born a male, or you can't compete, and I think that's for the good. And it's obviously led to the political changes that have swept through Alberta.
Well, and seeing some of that and coming in Alberta, I mean, I think that's where they're finally pushing it way beyond the goal line with this. People are being asked to deny what they can see with their own two eyes. And this is another one of those situations that's actually pretty easy to solve. We've got the technology. Are your chromosomes this, or are they this? If you got this, you compete in that category. If you've got that, you compete in that category. They tried to fuzzy the line because they knew that this guy had, and I'll say a guy had male chromosomes, but they said, it's an unusual case and it's different. No, it's not. He's a friggin' man. It turned out, we found later, after they'd forced that poor Italian boxer to apologize, this guy even had nuts. They were internal and apparently had a microchode, but he's a man.
Yeah. And you just have to look at him standing by these poor women he was about to beat up. But, before the Olympics, it started with countries in Europe like Sweden and Finland and Great Britain. They banned puberty blockers for kids, and there was the usual left-wing outrage, and they presented pretty compelling scientific evidence as to why you don't want to be putting 13, 14-year-old boys or girls on puberty blockers. And Premier Higgs in Newfoundland stood up and said, "Well, yeah, I kind of agree, and we're going to bring in a policy where if a kid wants to change his gender, then the parents have to be known." And then it came to Alberta, where Daniel Smith brought in new laws preventing males from competing in female sports and preventing surgery for minors and gender blockers for minors. And the left wing lost their collective mind and said Smith is murdering trans children. Scott Moe picked it up for his election last year, but sadly didn't quite follow through as strongly as Alberta did. But Alberta's just following the trend among civilized countries, Northern European countries who have been studying medicine for a lot longer than we have all changed it, and Alberta's changed it too. But it caused a bit of a disturbance in the force.
Well, I think the underlying bigger part of the debate, and it comes down to who is responsible for the children, the state or the parents. The left wants to get in between. They want to say those union teachers are more responsible in raising these children than the parents are. And that's where I think they're again, passing those goalposts. Even leftist parents realize, no, wait a minute. What's happening between my child and I is supposed to be between me and child, not the government. And, they shouldn't be putting a wall up between me and my child. I know there's abusive parents, but the reality is the default has to be the parental authority. Yeah. And that's what these battles are really about.
And the vast majority of the public agree that it should be the parents, right? And it's all part of this whole woke ideology that is finally starting to swing back to normal. There's a guy in the United States called Robbie Starbuck who launched a campaign against corporations who just have crazy DEI policies. And he got John Deere to change theirs, and Tractorland, and Toyota, Harley Davidson, the bourbon guys. They all stopped. Just before Christmas, American Airlines said they were abandoning their DEI policy. So I think that's going to, in the coming year, you're going to see more and more corporations do that. Problem where it's not changing is universities. And I don't know how you get the DEI out of there because they're all tenured.
Anything government's funded basically as well. I mean, civil service, some bigger issues. I mean, the difference with where Starbucks been going is they also have to answer to shareholders, and the bottom line with shareholders, they want to see a return, and they don't care if it's a transsexual Maori one-legged, lesbian that is in a position of authority. They just want to see a bottom line showing some profit, and they're tired of that, and they're pushing back. But if universities don't care about a profit, civil services don't care about a profit, so they don't have that pressure coming on to the managers.
It's going to be interesting because you've obviously got in North America 2 governments that promoted that with Biden and Trudeau. Biden will be gone in 20 days. Well, who knows when Trudeau will be gone, but he will be gone, and Poilievre will become prime minister. So it's going to bring the change even more back. But again, you've still got the universities to deal with.
Yeah, well, and again, just to kind of go a little more over it, this has been the year of provincial elections in Canada. I was just looking, so we had BC, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick had elections this year. Kind of different outcomes. BC, we saw quite a rise.
To me, BC was the most exciting. Mm-hmm. You had a BC Conservative Party rise from the ashes, folding in or trying to fold in with the BC United. Probably didn't go as smoothly as they would hope, but they came within a whisper of forming government, from being an upstart party to forming government. If I was a BC voter, I don't know why I would vote for David Eby, but it was funny. I mean, you put it on a map, and the vast majority of the land in BC voted Conservative, and it's just the tiny enclaves that give the NDP enough power. So to me, that was a fun election. Obviously, Mo was reelected. No big surprise there. Conservatives maintain power in Nova Scotia. And I think upcoming in this year, 2025, I think we're going to have an Ontario election. I think the polls are favorable for Premier Ford at the moment, so I think he's likely to call an early one. So,
Lord Ford, he's an interesting creature, that guy.
Is he a conservative or a liberal? Depends
on which way the wind's blowing. Yeah. I mean, I guess some people would say that's a post-ideological stance and an admirable one. I mean, I'm not a fan of his, but, well, he's not married to one side or another. He'll go with... I think it's more personal convenience than perhaps the benefit of the product.
We both love him because he's canceling bike lanes and paving them over and giving cars room to breathe again.
But then at the same time, he's hand in hand with Trudeau with massive subsidies into Ontario industries.
As you're right, I guess it's whatever way the wind is blowing. But you could see, the BC government had to elect a speaker from their ranks. So there's not and then you've got two Green Party winners. So it's not inconceivable the EB government falls at some point, and they go back to the polls. I think we're okay in Alberta, right? I don't have to worry about an Alberta election for a while.
I sure hope not. I mean, the parallels actually with the BC setup right now and with where Horgan was sitting with the Greens holding a balance of power for a little bit there too. They managed to cling in there for a bit, but it was tenuous.
Yeah.
And Horgan, that was one of the passings this year, actually. He'd been battling cancer on and off for a few years, but it finally caught up with him.
Well, look how long Trudeau's minority government has stayed in. And those 2 Green Party members have signed a confidence agreement with the NDP, just like the NDP federally did. With Trudeau to keep them in power. So, you know what? As we just found out, in the month of December, every day is different in politics, and you just never know what to expect.
Well, yeah, this wasn't on the list, but speaking of losers from 2024, Jagmeet Singh isn't faring any better than Justin Trudeau right now.
No, I mean, how badly does he want? I mean, he's already rich, right? He drives a $150,000 Maserati, but it's not his. He's not going to tell us who owns it, but it's not his. He's got your $10,000 Rolex watch. So he's got money. He's got a pension, but he doesn't have the gold-plated one yet, and that's what he's hanging on for. Wow. But he's you're right. He's come across. He stands up and Justin Trudeau, you're the worst prime minister in history, and then that afternoon, I'll vote for him. Yeah. Biggest hypocrite in Canadian political history, without a doubt.
Well, and just weak. I mean, I know that, and it gets under his skin. They keep twisting the pension knife. I don't know, maybe for some of his members that's a concern. I don't know if it's that much of a concern for him. Because as you said, he's already pretty well off. He doesn't have to worry about lining his pockets more. I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't say no to it, but I don't think that's the main motivating factor for the humiliating constant support of Trudeau. But the other thing is his party's broke.
Exactly.
They got no money in the bank. They can't run an election.
No. And they're going to be way in debt after the next election because they don't have any, And how do you fundraise with Jagmeet as a leader? Right? I mean, you're sitting there over the coffee table, well, who are we going to? We can't donate to Jagmeet. He's embarrassing us, and it's they're going to be. How do they get more money? It's going to be a tough fight for them.
I mean, they peaked with Jack Layton, and they just can't seem to. I mean, Singh is just a weak leader. There's no getting around that.
And again, why hasn't the NDP caucus figured that out and removed him?
Well, there's the issue. So they're socialists. I mean, if they were of the old school socialists in Russia, and thankfully they aren't, when you're done with your leader, some ricin or something, they have an accident and it goes away.
Falling out of a window seems to be the most popular way now.
Thankfully in Canada, we're not that uncivilized, but they have that loyalty to the leader mindset with socialists too. They don't take them out through democratic means, so they're stuck with them.
And you've got the thing is their party is not going up in the polls. Trudeau's decimated, but they're not benefiting from angry liberals. Angry liberals are all going to the Conservatives.
Well, and that's it. What an opportunity. I mean, if they had a moderate, bright, respectable leader of the NDP, they could actually be capitalizing very much on the decline of the Liberals. But they haven't been able to. They're falling with him.
And right now, because of that, we're going to have probably the Bloc Québécois as the official opposition.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Of all things, he's one of the brighter,
he is. I quite enjoy him.
Consistent leaders in the House of Commons. I mean, he makes no bones about it. He's infuriating sometimes, but Blanchette says Quebec is first. That's what I'm here for. I don't care about the rest. I don't dislike you. I just don't care. I'm here for Quebec.
He's been hired to do that job, and he's doing it quite well.
Yeah, he's. I remember during the debates in one of the elections too. He was you're the strongest debater there. I mean, you're only running in a little portion of the country, but you got to respect the guy. You don't have to like him, or agree with him.
Absolutely.
But, and he's kind of eager for an election because they're doing pretty good out there, actually. And he'll probably be sitting well.
Yeah, so you could have, if they get elected as the provincial government too, the first thing they're going to do is call a referendum. And that's. I hope it's not as tight as the last one.
No, I hope they win and leave this time. But that's
you hope?
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
I want to see Confederation redrawn, but. That's a longer discussion.
I don't think we've got an hour and a half for that.
No.
I want to see Canada stay together.
People are curious. I'll do that self-serving plug. I did write a book on it, and they can search that out if they like.
That's
see where I'm going.
Yeah, perfect gift for next Christmas, 2025.
There we go. But another thing to look forward to in politics. Well, look forward to. But yeah, if we have another Quebec referendum, boy, what a big event. I mean, this.
Ooh, yeah, especially with Trudeau as Prime Minister.
Well, even without, this country isn't very unified.
Polyev, but again, it's another show.
Yes,
another show.
All right. So let's see here. We got Jasper. We had the fires. I mean, it's just been fires every summer, every year. We're going to talk to the climate change people. There's lots of discussions on whether it's forest management or a drought period that's coming or going or things or whatever, but there's no doubt there have been some pretty bad bloody fires. And boy, Jasper, I mean, talk about a gem.
Yeah, maybe just absolutely a terrible story. A third of the town destroyed, I think, if I remember correctly, hundreds of homes gone. And it became, after the fire was put out, it became a political story about forest management and how the delay of getting rid of all that deadwood on the bottom, and came back to roost for our friend Stephen Guilbeault that it was his department that kept putting it off. But it should be a lesson for every, and we have a lot of them in Canada, as you know, especially out west, towns in heavily wooded areas. Like Fort McMurray's doing huge work in terms of getting defensive lines built and towns need to learn the lesson from that and get it done. And the federal government needs to spend some money in getting it done for these places. And they need to work on their response. I mean, there were stories about fire trucks on the outskirts of Jasper being told they couldn't go in because they weren't Parks Canada right?
Yeah.
And they've got to get that bureaucracy figured out that if it happens again, the response is
It's all hands on deck.
Streamless, and it's all hands on deck, and we'll worry about who pays for what afterwards. Let's just get the fire out. But, hopefully, it was once in a generational type thing, and we don't have to see it. Sure.
I'll tell you, as a guy who spent a lot of time in the bush, it's not. And there's some very vulnerable areas I've seen. It was actually a YouTube video I did a few years back because not enough people understand. I used to be a surveyor working in the foothills, and did I tell you the amount of choked debris and deadfall? You can barely walk through some areas of the eastern slopes right now because we've been fighting fires. So the fires normally would sweep through 80 years or so and kind of burn everything down, and everything grows back up and it regenerates. And we have hindered it. We've stopped spot fires when they come up and things like that. But also at the same time, the best substitute we have is logging. We've stopped that because we don't want to see that on our eastern slopes. But guys, there's a tinderbox out there waiting. And if we don't do something about it, again, we can fight about climate change and everything else. It doesn't matter. The situation is there. And if we don't start cutting that stuff out, it is going to burn, and we're not going to be able to fight it. They talk about the intensity of the fires too, sure, but that's because you have all of that dead stuff. There's like gasoline.
Yeah. If I was in a town like there was a fire that threatened Banff. When all those female firefighters did a
controlled burn,
did a controlled burn, and it got out of hand, and or Linda Slobodian had some fun with that one.
Yeah, that was a tough story.
And there's always seems to be now forest fires along the Trans-Canada Highway. 20, 30 hectares there, 20, 40 hectares there. But yeah, I share your concern. What the solution is, I don't know. You got one?
No, we just have to get more realistic and proactive with management. I mean, there's no cure. I mean, to try and clear out the amount of deadwood around every community and populated area, the cost as well, even if you got over the environmentalist road bumps and the NIMBYs, it's not easy.
No.
I mean, it's a lot of bush.
Yeah, every town has got to get their defenses in place.
Yeah.
And spend the money to get their defenses in place. And then when the fire starts, there's less worry.
That we can mitigate.
Let the fire do its work and do Mother Nature's work, and the town should be fairly safe.
Let's get into an American one. This was an unusual story, but it kind of broke recently. But the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson gunned down on the street on camera. It's horrifying. This is the world now where we get to see everything. The amount of violence we can see on the internet with that Luigi Mangione.
Yeah.
What got me is the response from some people to this.
Oh, yeah, the left, Michael Moore, and we don't like murder, but in this case, crazy response, and the response from women, fawning over this guy and getting his face tattooed on their bodies.
That Taylor Lorenz, she was always nuts, but at the same time, I mean, Piers Morgan, there was an interview, and he called her out, but she would refuse to condemn the man. She's basically saying this murder on the street was a good idea because you don't like private health insurance CEOs. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's got a family, and he was heading to work and shot in the back with a homemade gun by a guy who was upset because he couldn't have sex anymore because he had a back injury and the surgery screwed it up.
Yeah, the guy's a nut.
He's a nuts, and he stalked. I mean, this wasn't random or anything. He planned this, and he stalked him, and he knew where he was going to be, and covered his tracks quite well, except when he pushed his mask down to flirt with the check-in girl at the hostel, where you could see his face. And then, continued to munch away with his mask halfway down at McDonald's, and an alert citizen spotted him, and he was turned, but he hadn't got rid of the gun. He hadn't got rid of any of the evidence.
And these lunatics even boycotted the McDonald's because somebody at the McDonald's reported this murderer, and he got caught because of it. People have a look in the mirror a bit. I mean, come on.
And everybody's going down the conspiracy rabbit hole. Well, why was he found? Just happened to be found with the gun. Just happened to be found with a manifesto. Just happened to be found with the bullets.
Because he's a Fruit Loop.
Because he's a nutcase and he got caught. And, they're all saying that it was planted and stuff like this. But, I couldn't imagine if my wife came home with a Luke, whatever his name, tattoo on her arm. I mean, what are you thinking, woman? I mean, tramp stamps were bad enough back in the day, but what are you thinking, honestly?
It's just a bizarre world. I mean, I get pretty worked up with leftist leaders and ones I can't stand, but I would never even for a second think I want to live in a world where the solution is to go out and gun them down.
No.
No. Yet that is kind of what this underlying from, and not a tiny fringe, a surprising amount of people who think this murderer, this nutcase is a hero.
No. And if somebody guns down Polyev, God forbid, there'll be the same reaction in Canada.
God. Well, and again, same thing. I wouldn't want to see Trudeau gunned down.
No.
I want to see him out of office. I want to see him gone. I wouldn't mind seeing some of if maybe he might warrant some charges, but never violence. That's we're better.
No, exactly. It's because you and I are civilized. Unusual, eh?
Yes.
Usually we're the most uncivilized in the room.
In many ways. All right. Well, that ran out the time on us. There's still more stories to cover. Yeah.
We didn't even cover them all.
Well, there's only one left, and that was an issue in the NDP. And we'll report on that all year anyways. This seatless...
Call me when he gets his seat.
Yes, all right. Well, thank you, Dave, for all the coverage in the last year. And
my pleasure.
I know you've got a heck of a lot more to deal with in the year to come. And,
and a great team to do it.
So. We do have that. And folks, again, thanks for joining in and supporting us all this year. Just that reminder, get on, subscribe. That's how we do it. That's how we can pay the bills. $9.99 a month, $100 a year. Start the new year off right. Get a subscription and support independent media. We don't take tax dollars. We won't take tax dollars, and it makes us accountable to you. So happy New Year to you all. We know it's going to be an interesting 2025. Let's hope it's a productive and better one. And all the best to you and yours. See you on the next show.